Hi. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Taking the Leap. I am so excited to be here today with Bonnie Low-Kramen. So, welcome, Bonnie. It's so great to see you. It's funny, we just popped on like 5 minutes early. We're like, because we haven't seen
It's
each
been
other
so long.
in a really long time. And I always try to reel it back and think about how did we meet? And
Yeah,
we actually met through a person that took your second Be the Ultimate Assistant workshop. And she
right.
said, Caryn, you got to meet this person. She was working on an event with me that I was producing
Mhm.
because her boss that year was the chair of the event. And she was like, oh my God, I met this person. You're going to love her. You've got to meet her. And so I was in New York and I called you and I said, let's have lunch. And we did. And the rest is history.
And that
You
was 2012 we figured out. So
Yeah, I mean,
10
it
years
was a
ago.
while ago, like 9 years ago, right?
Ooh, boy, a lot's happened in those 9
10 years
years.
ago. I know. But
Oof.
you know what? It doesn't feel like 10 years.
It does, and then it feels even longer in a way because so much has happened.
It's true. It's true. I was thinking about this conversation and I was thinking if we had this conversation even 2 years ago or 3 years ago, how different would it be? But we'll
Mm,
go there in a second. So, welcome. Welcome to Taking the
thank
Leap.
you.
And Taking the Leap are conversations with women who have created their dream business, who are more than 40 years old and have really gone for it. And not only have they changed their own life, but they've impacted so many other lives along the way. And this is all about paying it forward and
Yeah.
helping women who are sort of on the edge, who want to try something, who are afraid to, or who don't have they don't feel that they have the knowledge. They may very well have everything they need to do it, but they need that encouragement. So this is all about, where did you start? Where are you today? How different is it? Is it what you thought it was going to be? So let's reel it back a little. And Bonnie, tell us a little bit about yourself and your story and your journey to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. And good for you for doing this podcast for women who need to hear these stories because I really believe in that quote that if you can't see it, you can't be it.
Right.
So, that's all about role models, et cetera. And boy, was I lucky to have an amazing role model in the actress Olympia Dukakis. Um,
Not
today,
what you thought was going to happen, right?
no, oh my gosh, nothing about my career was planned. And in fact, it's perfect that we're having this conversation today because today would have been her 91st birthday.
Oh, wow.
And she's on my mind every single day. But my journey was not planned. And I, graduated with a degree in theater and English from Rutgers University in New Jersey, where I'm from. And all I really knew was that I needed to be in show business. I wanted very much to be in the world of show business.
Hmm.
And everybody, the obvious thing is that be an actress. But that I did try that, but for like 5 minutes
Did you
because
take lessons? I mean, did you
so
go to
hard. Oh my
acting
gosh. Well,
school?
I was a theater major at college and I thought, well, that's what I'll do. But the reality is if you don't need to be an actress, I mean, really that it's a professor once said, if that needs to be the only thing that you can do, the only thing that will make you happy, those are the people who become actors and
Wow.
actresses. For me, that meant working in a theater box office and selling tickets. I mean, it really
Got to
began
start
very much.
somewhere, right?
You gotta start somewhere is the lesson. Um, I worked in a series of box offices, and then a friend, as you know, all the life is about relationships and about the coming
Absolutely.
together, connecting the dots, as Steve Jobs would say. A friend from a colleague from a theater in Texas introduced me to Olympia Dukakis in New Jersey a full year before she even got cast in the film Moonstruck.
How did she think that you were going to help her, or what was the reason?
Well, when we met, okay, so my degree is in theater, but also English. And
Mm,
I love writing. And they
wow.
needed at the small theater, the whole theater in Montclair, New Jersey, they needed a PR director, someone to write press releases for the
Uh-huh.
plays that they were putting on. And the truth is that my background was kind of perfect between the degree, my ability to write and my experience in
Mhm.
these theater box
And it was a
offices.
step up, let's be honest, you know?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
So I happily took this job, but the world didn't know who Olympia Dukakis was at the time. And 10 months in, she got cast in the film Moonstruck with Cher and Nick Cage and Vinnie Gardenia. And she had to fly to Toronto to shoot the film for a month. And during that month, she needed someone she trusted to be communication central, to, triage all the information from
Mhm.
the theater with her. So because she couldn't have all these people calling her every single day, she wanted one person, and that was me.
And had she
Oh,
been like, how was she related to that theater? Like, how did you know
oh,
her?
she ran the theater. She
Ah.
was the producing artistic director. She was the head person. No one got hired at the theater unless Olympia met them
Ah,
first.
interesting.
So, yeah, sorry, I left that piece out. Very
I was, like,
important
trying to
piece.
figure out, okay, what did she do in the
Yeah.
theater, you know?
So, the actors, the leadership at the theater not only ran the theater, but they starred in the different plays at the
Productions,
theater.
yeah.
But we had some really famous people come through. We were only 12 miles from New York City. I mean, we worked with Samuel Jackson and oh my gosh, Philip Seymour Hoffman, who passed
Wow.
away fairly recently. We had some Deborah Allen, Karen Allen from Raiders of the Lost Ark. They're
Uh-huh.
really huge actors who loved coming into this small theater, and they were based in New York City. The buzz on Moonstruck was so strong. I was working as Olympia's assistant when she was in Canada. We just didn't have a name for what I was doing. I was checking the answering machine
Like
and
chief of
coordinating.
staff maybe, or
Pardon?
was it chief of staff then, or just
No, no, not at all. I was just coordinating communication, just keeping the wheels turning, you
Mhm.
know, seriously checking the answering machine, pulling messages off, and then trying to triage them, understand who needs to get this question, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
When she came back from Toronto, the buzz on Moonstruck was pretty instant. The word was, oh my gosh, this film is going to get nominated for an Oscar. Olympia Dukakis is going to get nominated. Like, this was going to be a big Hollywood
Uh-huh. Deal.
blockbuster hit, which it turned out to be.
Right.
All of that was correct. And what that meant was a lot of publicity. And I was publicity director. So it meant that Olympia and I were working together. My goodness, it seemed like 10, 12, 14 hours a day for many
Uh-huh.
months. And that is the thing that brought us together. I became her assistant. She and I never thought it would last for 25 years.
Wow.
One film just led into Steel
Right.
Magnolias and Look Who's Talking. And
And so did you immediately, like, after that film came out, was that the end of the theater basically, or
no, it did. Interesting question. It only lasted a few more years. It did great things for the theater. It brought a
Uh-huh.
lot of attention to the theater since Olympia was running it. But the interesting, important thing to note was that in 1996, there was a huge budget cut to the arts in the United States and in certain states and in New Jersey,
and that
where we
didn't
were.
survive?
Our budget cut got, I think it was like 40%. And that was the beginning. That was the end. That was the end.
Wow.
Olympia, as the head of the theater, I knew it was real, that we were going to shut it down after 19 years. I mean, this was
Wow.
heartbreaking stuff. We thought, oh, well, we're going to be really successful now, but not with a 40% budget cut.
And they didn't
Not,
get private donors at that point in time to try to
not
support?
enough
Because
to
now
make
if you
it.
look at theaters, it's so much private money, you know?
Yes, and that's because so much government money has been cut to the arts. So
Right.
at the time, it was, Olympia felt like she had begun again so many times, and I knew the end was really near the day I saw her
Wow. So
grab an
there
empty
you were,
box.
now you were her assistant. And did it have a name at that point yet, or
Yes, I was now her personal assistant, and I went home to my typewriter in 1996
yeah.
and typed out a proposal to her about opening an office in her home as her personal assistant. And I proposed a salary that was double what I was making because I knew
She was making money at that
the
point. She could pay
phone
you.
didn't, and it still was pretty modest.
Right,
The
right,
phone didn't stop ringing. And I knew, in my classes, I use a slide that says assistants often know better. And in this case, the writing was on the wall. Like this wasn't going to stop because
right.
I was in touch with her agent and manager, and the publicity, the machine, just it wasn't going to stop. And I'm happy
That's
to
a good
tell
thing.
you that I was right.
That was a good thing, right?
Well, she needed someone to help manage all of that activity in her life, and I needed a job. So, and we already had
You had
the
already started to
machine.
build this relationship. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think, it's interesting when I was reading some of your things that really at the end of the day, so much of it is about the relationship.
Oh yeah, big time. And that is the case in 2022.
Right.
But it's a very unique partnership because an assistant doesn't exist unless she or he has someone to assist. So it's a partnership. It automatically means two people
Or
at
yeah,
least
or
in
more.
or more working together and figuring
Mhm.
that out. And it's not one size fits all. The right assistant for you, Caryn, would be different for somebody else.
Absolutely.
Your preferences, your pace, the kinds of goals and
Yeah, what
initiatives
you
that
and
you have,
also how you want them to compliment you,
big time. So
you know?
it's a very interesting chemistry that has to happen between people. It's not a relationship, a partnership that should be gone into fast. A setup for
Mhm.
failure, the people who don't meet each other before they get
Right.
hired, and
And I was gonna
ridiculous things like that.
so just fast forward a little bit to what you're
Yeah,
doing today, because then I want to go back to that point.
sure.
I know all these people who are doing virtual assistants, but they don't last because they're in some country in Oshkosh. And although
Uh,
that's a lovely idea, I'm not so sure that is the long-term solution to so many things.
it's
But
it's very
I want you to fast forward to where you
okay.
are today, because I think it really speaks to the training and and where you are in terms of how you approach that relationship.
Well, I stayed with Olympia for 25 years, and I thought as the years went on, I thought, well, this is it. This is how I'm going to end my career. But then something happened. I wrote a book called Be the Ultimate Assistant about my experience, and essentially because Caryn, I looked around and I didn't see any books on the subject or next to nothing, and I saw no classes about this.
You
And
had to figure it out on your own.
I had to wing it every single day with
Right.
technology and with the systems. And I thought there had to be a better way. This is ridiculous. I'm a college
Right, right.
educated person. There had to be a better way to do this. And I didn't find it. And so I thought, you know what? I could spend the rest of my life complaining about it, or I can do it myself. So I put pen to paper and I started thinking about, all right, well, if I were sitting in that seat in that class, what would it look like? So I resigned from my work with Olympia in 2012 and 2011. And she was shocked at first, but then she understood
Mhm.
because there was a need. There was a serious need in the world for training, for assistance,
Mhm.
and for books, for resources for
Did you
them.
train her new assistant?
I certainly did. Yeah, I mean, he came to us as already having experience, but we did a month together. A
Mhm.
month, I mean, after 25 years, it took
Right, I mean,
quite a while to, like, do
exactly.
that handoff. That was,
Yeah,
a hard thing after 25 years because it's so much like a marriage.
right,
It's
right.
so personal. And, since then, since 2011, I have been hired in 14 countries and 38 states. And amazingly, because I counted them, I was like, this is nuts. I never
Like, what's
thought
going on?
that it would do that there would be that much of a need internationally. I
Mhm.
had a vision that I'd spend my time going around the United States teaching and helping assistants support these high level leaders. And that would have been perfectly fine with me. But then I was receiving invitations for England and Scotland and Australia and South Africa and Dubai. Like,
And also not just helping the assistants, because the beauty of what you're doing today, and I'll let you share it, but the beauty is it's not just one side that you're
Right.
supporting.
Yeah. And my vision is to create ultimate partnerships. So I've
Huge.
created programming that bring the leaders into the room with their assistants. And it's magical what happens. And it doesn't take that much, and it doesn't
Right.
take that long for there to be all of these light bulb moments and this awareness about how they can work so much better together by setting clear expectations, by
Mhm.
making it safe for assistants to speak the truth to power,
Right.
you know? Um,
To not just sort of sit in a little cubicle and,
yeah,
with their head down, because they have a lot of knowledge in that seat, and
they
sometimes it's
certainly
what
do. They
eh,
most certainly do. And
and a
because they
bird's eye
see,
view.
well, assistants all around the world say, I ask them, is it true that you see and hear everything?
Right.
They're in their executive's inbox. They're sitting in on meetings. They're watching people leave meetings and reading body language, etc. They know things. What I say, it's now time to say what they're seeing and hearing. And leaders just hopefully will be receptive to that.
Yeah, I was
And they
gonna say,
can,
how are they, what strikes me is, who their leader is, right? Their leader has to want that partnership the same way that they
right.
want
And
that
not all
partnership.
leaders do. And
Right.
some are the ones who hire those assistants in other countries. And you get what you pay for. The spectrum of assisting someone is really broad, where I was at one end of the spectrum with
Mhm.
Olympia, essentially, where I was
Partner in
doing,
crime, right? I mean, you kinda
well,
you're
my
like a
responsibilities were to do everything that she didn't need to do. So I had by the time I was done after 25 years, my job description could have been 7 pages. But, I couldn't do things like learn her lines. I couldn't go for her costume fitting. I couldn't go for her doctor's appointments. But I did everything else to enable the work. Not
right.
every leader wants that kind of involvement in their life. So there's the whole other end of the spectrum where a leader just only decides that they need calendar management or, uh, a PowerPoint deck created. You can buy any skill. What what an assistant at my end of the spectrum though has is context, is the idea of strategic
Mhm.
business partner, the looking around corners and watching ahead. An assistant 1,000 miles away is not going to have that kind of context.
Right, right,
Not many of those kinds of assistants who are to deserve to be respected for their work, but they don't want that kind of input. They don't want that kind of access. They don't want
right.
that kind of responsibility. So, and then there's a lot of assistants in between on that spectrum.
It's, it's an interesting thing. I grew up with my dad. He had multiple businesses, but he had one assistant that he had forever, until he was about ready to retire and
Okay.
sell his company. And when he did sell his company to someone who was younger than him, that assistant went with the younger person. And I remember the devastation that my dad felt, because that person had been literally, I mean, he'd come home from work and he was on the phone with the assistant. And it was, she paid my, she gave me my allowance checks. I mean, she was part of our family. She was
Mhm.
very much ran his life, and it was a real partnership. She knew everything that was going on. She had input in everything that was going on, and you know, it was a really amazing relationship.
And you got to see it with your
I
own
saw it
eyes.
absolutely
Yeah.
100% of the time, and it was great. I mean, it worked for my dad. It's what
Right.
he needed to be able to function, to run multiple businesses and to be an entrepreneur, but it really, at the end of the day, came down to trust, because he
Always.
trusted this person with pretty much everything. And
Right.
once he made that decision to trust them, he was all in. And I think that that trust is so important, and it doesn't happen overnight. I mean,
Oh,
you have
no,
to
it
build.
does build over time, and
Exactly.
it isn't only your dad who trusted her, but you and,
A
you know,
100%. My brother,
others
I
in your
trusted her,
family,
the whole
and that's
family.
a special person who can do that, who is not only giving the leader what they need, but also the extended family, and that,
Oh, yeah.
it's a line you can't cross the line. You need to know where the boundaries are. And I suspect that over the years there had to be little bubbles of, miscommunications or overstepping. I mean, in my
It's bound
case,
to happen in the course of every day,
oh my
when
gosh, you can't
people
avoid
are
it
so intimately
when
involved
you're
in
working
everything.
that closely. I remember one time, I can't remember how I was overstepping my bounds with Olympia, but her comment back to me is she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, Bonds, I've been putting my snowsuit on by myself for a long time. You don't need to be involved in this one.
And you knew,
And
and you knew,
I
like, you
knew,
knew what
okay.
to
I'm
do,
like,
exactly.
fair enough, fair enough. And I just think it's impossible to work that closely with someone and not have those kinds of situations once in a while.
So, I think it's really interesting because this wasn't your dream, right? You
Mm-mm.
didn't envision when you started working
No,
with her that here you were going to work for all these years together. You were going to build this knowledge base. I mean, this
right.
experience base that's huge. And obviously, it was a very special person. So you had access to a lot of different kinds of
Yeah,
experiences, more than the average person. And it wasn't a corporate setting per se, although I'm
right.
sure you had to work with plenty of companies and sponsors and, all these other
Fair enough.
people,
Yeah.
but you weren't sitting in a 1,000 person, IBM type office every day. And so you had this different kind of, you went to her home and, you know, i-
Hmm.
you're seeing it from the inside. It's a very different relationship. And so then there was this transition, and you realized, okay, not only have I been able to do this for this one person, but clearly my knowledge is going to can make an impact when you
Yeah.
wrote that book on so many others. And that's a huge leap. That is, it's one thing to know that you can do this really well
Yeah.
for this person that you've spent
Uh-huh.
this time with, but knowing and having the courage to write the book and say, you know what, it's time for me to take this to the rest of the world.
Right.
That's a huge, that's really taking a leap. And,
Right.
kudos to you to having the courage and the ability to do that, because now you've taken that, and I would say you've even grown that even more. And I know this year's been a big one. I actually watched your TEDx
Oh, thank
presentation,
you.
and you are sort of positioned in the center of this whole workplace. I don't want to say controversy, because I say it's challenges and opportunities. And because you've had these experiences both with the executives and with the assistants and in the workplace and
Mhm.
corporate and non-corporate, that's a really unique seat and position to be in. And so, where's it taking you now?
Yeah, I was honored to have been asked to give a TEDx talk. That wasn't something I sought out either. When I left Olympia, it was terrifying. But I think maybe part of the saving grace is I didn't know how hard it was to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know that when I resigned, when I gave my notice, I mainly knew that I wanted to teach and speak, and I had quite a lot of interest and opportunities coming my way. What I didn't know is that in a matter of seconds, as soon as assistant to Olympia Dukakis were not the words behind my name anymore, I became a business owner. I became
Right.
an entrepreneur. And what was very interesting is now that those words weren't behind my name anymore, who was now going to return my call? Let me promise you that if you have a movie star's name behind your own
They answer
name,
your phone call.
they answer your phone calls pretty darn quick. It was very interesting to me to find out who was now not going to return my call now that I didn't have that piece of my identity
And did you
anymore.
experience that?
I did. And actually, I think it's important to say with you that, and admit this, that when women take muster the courage to make such a leap, because, you said it was a big deal.
Well,
It
you're on
was
your own now. It's your name
it was
that's
a
on the line.
very
It's not
big
somebody
deal.
else's, right?
And the people that are closest to you, it's very interesting to observe and hear from them who's for you and who's not for you. It was surprising to me that some of the people I thought would be the most supportive were the ones who said, "Are you crazy? Are you nuts to resign and give up a steady paycheck and a job with a movie star who loves you so much?" And then the support I got from people I didn't expect, who said, "Do it, Bonnie, do it, go, go, go." And it was mixed between women and men. But to anyone out there listening to this, and you're dreaming about a goal and to go off on your own, perhaps, know that not everybody's going to be happy for you. Know that not everybody is going to have the same response. But you know what? What I realized is those people who were the naysayers, who were frightened for me, they're looking at your life through their lens.
100%.
Essentially, they're saying that they would be terrified if they did
Right.
it. And a lot of people made noise or words to the effect of that they wish they had the courage to leave their positions.
It was projecting their own insecurities and lack of confidence to
Exactly.
go
Don't
out
you
there
think
and
that's
do
an
that.
important point to make? I don't know if you've ever had that experience, Caryn, where
Yeah, I think it's also they don't necessarily understand. I mean, they can only see it through their own eyes, through their own experiences. Maybe they were never, someone said recently, "You're so comfortable like living alone." And I said, "Well, I've always lived alone. So it's not something that scares me, but other people, they're freaked out living
yeah,
alone. Like, oh my God, what are they going to do for dinner? And can they go to a restaurant and eat by themselves?" And I'm like, oh my God, I love doing that. Like, that's my favorite thing. So everybody's always looking through their own set of
right?
experiences.
So you
Yeah,
get that question and you're prepared for
100%.
it. And I was a bit surprised to see that dynamic going on. But what held me firm, I had some key people in my life who were very supportive. And even though I had resigned from Olympia, she was rock solid behind me. And I had some key people who said, "I see your vision." And I talk about in my classes, I talk about the sweet spot. The sweet spot is that intersection of doing the work you love,
Hmm.
that you're really good at, that the world needs, and that
Absolutely.
you can get paid money to make a living
Right.
at. My dream was never to, have millions and millions of dollars. Maybe that's crazy. Some of you may thinking, "Oh, she's nuts." My dream really was to do the work that I cared so much about, and that
Hmm.
in all of my classes enable me to talk one-on-one with, at this point, hundreds of assistants and leaders. And that perspective, Caryn, that I have on the global workplace has given me an inside look to what the pain points really are.
Yeah.
And that's why the TEDx talk was called "The Real Reasons People Quit."
Hmm.
Not the ones they put on a letter of resignation, and not the answers, not the reasons they give at an exit interview, but the real reasons. And
And that's you're not scary to speak to. No one wants to tell some HR person, in some kind of an exit interview, or even before that
yeah,
exit interview, what the challenges are that they're having. I mean, there's a pretty big fear out there of going to what they're supposed to be supportive for them,
yep,
and sharing their concerns
yeah,
in that kind of an environment. And
hmm,
you know the role that you've taken on, because I've seen you in some of these workshop perspectives, is neutral in a certain way, right? You're safe and you're respected, and people just want to share with you. I mean,
well, if I have a gift, and one of them is that people do open up easily with me. And I believe, and I love that. I absolutely love that. And
right,
I believe it's in part because they know that I understand. They know that I've seen it. They can share with me what's
right.
happening in
You
their
get it,
world. I totally get it. I've probably experienced it myself, but if I haven't, I know someone who has.
right?
And my students trust me so much that, when I hear a story that particularly resonates, I can say to them, well, one of my, if you want, one of my students would be perfect to speak with on that. Do you want me to connect you?
Right.
Someone who's really lived it
Right.
and
And
can,
they're like, oh my God, because it's behind the scenes. And in a way, when you think of the role still today of an EA or a personal assistant, right? Is it still behind the scenes to some extent? I mean, that you're not the front person. You are the person that's behind the person,
they've
right?
never been the front person. They don't want to be the front
Right. They
person.
want to be behind.
They really, the top assistants will tell you they love being behind the scenes. The profession is still 95 to 98% female.
Yeah, I was going to
It's
ask
still
that.
a very female dominated industry.
And across
But
ages too. So are
oh,
younger women going into that role with the
yes,
same
they are. And
enthusiasm that older women, because that was a big deal. That was a great job, to
yeah,
go into it years
yeah.
ago, I would say.
There's still a real appetite for the celebrity world, and the pandemic changed so much about the workplace, not the least of which is the way we're communicating right now.
Right.
We're hundreds of miles apart, and yet we feel like we're in the same room. Assistants are, even on a personal level, even for CEOs, assistants are functioning from their own homes and
So how do
communicating.
they build that relationship now if they're not, if they've had some
Yeah,
time with that person prior to the pandemic, so at least they have some sense of how they might react, but how do they do it
it's a
now?
challenge. It's a real challenge. Human beings are meant to be in the same room together and to
Mhm.
see more of one another other than from the, shoulders up,
Right.
um, on a video. So top assistants, the most desired schedule is a hybrid one where it's a 3-2 combination or 2-3,
Either you go to their office or their
in the
home or
office, at
somewhere.
home. When
Right.
an executive is traveling, an assistant is happily working from home, kind of thing. The top assistants acknowledge that being in person with their executive at least part of the time is desirable. Some of them hit the road and they travel together. There's a best-selling author who you would absolutely know, who's based in Florida. Assistant is in New York. And over many years, they have worked together virtually, texting and emailing and video calling
Right.
on a weekly basis. And then once a month, once every 2 months, assistant goes to author.
But is that more of a functional relationship? You're going
No,
back to sort of where they were on that spectrum. Is that more like, okay,
no,
this person
you
can
know,
handle my
it
XYZ, or
it ends up being strategic in many cases. And of course, over time, the trust builds and more responsibility is given to an assistant.
Mhm.
So really, I'm hearing straight from assistants who are functioning remotely with their leaders, and they are really connected in a powerful way. It is a challenge, to have that extended relationship
Right.
with the spouse and with the kids, as you were painting with
Yeah.
that relationship. Those still exist. It's just we're relying more on technology now, and I think it remains to be seen if the pendulum is going to swing back some more, meaning more people were wanting to be in person with each other
So
more frequently.
a question on the executive side. I know like the entrepreneurs that I work with, and I still work with entrepreneurs organization. I still work with the young presidents, and recently I was doing a retreat for one of them, and it was really hard to get in touch with. Finally, he said, I just hired a new assistant. Now you'll get your answers, like, so do me a favor, just deal with this new assistant, which I did do. And, you know, are the younger sort of entrepreneurs or presidents, are they as likely to realize the importance of hiring that person to help them out as sort of someone who's a little
Yeah.
bit older and just, you know, they're just in a different position. And so I wonder if, the younger ones realize, because they do know, well, you know what, I don't have to talk to anyone. I can text them, or I can, just do
Mhm.
email. And, they don't want to pick up a phone. They don't want to have a conversation. So,
No, until the pain gets too much.
and
The,
then they
the
realize
pain
they got to
and
do
the itch.
something.
At first, young entrepreneurs don't seem to see the value of an assistant. First of all, they're not teaching it in business school that they should be thinking about
Right,
that. And I'm of a camp that they should be teaching that in business school for sure.
right.
But then what happens is these young entrepreneurs realize, you know what? I'm rich and powerful, and I still only get 24 hours in the day. That's all I get,
I'm
24
just like
hours.
everybody else.
And Cameron Herold is a leadership expert I follow, and he says
I know
to
him.
leaders like that,
Well,
if you are not, if you don't have an assistant,
then
you
you are
are one.
right.
And sure, young leaders can do their own correspondence. They can absolutely do their own calendaring. They can do their own travel. Just because they know how to do it does not mean it's smart to do,
Right.
or that
It's
it's
not a
the
good
best
use of
use of
their
their time.
times or their skills in many cases.
But they haven't been taught how to find an assistant. So what's great is when these young entrepreneurs are getting mentorship from older leaders who have
Right.
been around the block, and they can say to them, you know what, you really need to get an assistant because it's
Yeah.
going to change your life.
So one of the
And it
things
will.
I see a lot of on, I'm on all these boards,
Yeah.
like, groups and online groups and
Sure.
Facebook groups and all these things.
Yeah.
One of the things I see all the time are these questions with, so I want to hire a virtual assistant. What are the kinds of things that you can ask them to do? And,
Mhm.
you know, like literally very clueless in terms of what are they looking for and what's important to them, and then what are they going to give them to do, and how are they going to manage that process,
Mhm.
because you can give it to them to do, but it doesn't mean that it's going to happen, or that they're actually going to be good at it, or that you're going to measure it or
Yeah.
not measure it. And it ends up in some pretty tough scenarios, and I think that's where you come in many cases.
Well, the training I do is the people who come to my class, the person who came to my class in that year two
Right,
are the high level assistants, the ones supporting CEOs and high level leaders and celebrities and very wealthy and busy entrepreneurs. Um, there's a very broad spectrum. I those are the people I train to function as strategic business partners. If a leader decides that they don't need that kind of support, if they don't need someone to be literally sitting in on a leadership team meeting to take notes and to give input, then they need my advice to those other leaders is to be really honest about the tasks that you don't like to do, that you don't want to do, that and that will be the beginning of a job description for
right.
a lower level assistant. And if you don't like maintaining the database, well, I understand that. Find someone who
Who's good
has
at
that
it.
skill set and who's
Right,
really good at it and enjoys it.
right,
So it is at all turns, at whatever end of the spectrum they're on, the need for a detailed job description that's accurate is 100% necessary. So
critical.
it's not easy. This is going to take some time and effort to get it right. But when leaders get it right and put that time in, they are singing their assistants' praises that they couldn't live without them, like your
Right.
father.
So I have a quick question about women leaders. So women tend to think that they're really good and they can pretty much manage anything on their own, and they can multitask and they can do all
Mhm.
these things. How do you and women are starting to climb, the ladder, and they are starting to break those glass ceilings, and they are leaders in many companies. Are they more resistant to support? Are they less resistant? And do they manage it differently?
That's a great question. And women are the data shows that women are being pulled in a million different directions, even more so than men. That the
Right.
data is showing that women still are doing 9 hours more of housework a week. And I go back to the idea that women and men only get 24 hours a day
Right.
to choose how they're using that time. The pandemic brought women back home, and they got to enjoy, and men too, but women especially, got to really enjoy their families again. That they're not being in that commute anymore.
Hmm.
And, women are the primary caregivers.
Right.
So what I'm seeing are women leaders more receptive to support. That they know that women understand that they cannot get it all done without another set of hands, another set of eyes and ears,
Hmm.
and the stigma is now broken because everybody was working
And
from home.
delegating is easier in a certain way.
Yes, and it takes practice, like everything else. This takes
Hmm.
practice to get good at it, and women have less practice right now than men do. But I'm gonna do everything I can to help them catch up.
And build that. I mean, they are good at building the relationship, though,
Yes, yes.
if they want it.
That's true about women and men. We have
Hmm.
to be motivated and see the value.
Right.
we
Right.
we need to really. I have an assistant I work with. Jen works with me 20 hours a week.
Hmm.
She works on her own primarily, but we work on Zoom 4 hours a week, so we get to see each other and check in
Hmm.
with each other. And it's been a 9-year partnership, and it's changed and moved, but we're both highly motivated to keep it going because I have a need and so
Hmm.
does she. And we learn together, we make mistakes together. um, Women have a higher tolerance for mistakes happening and for it to be messy than men do. I,
Hmm.
I think this pandemic has thrown people in ways that they didn't expect, and that the stress levels are pretty high. And we know that people
Right.
act out stress in different ways. So it still remains to be seen how this is all going to play out.
I was going to say, so going forward with this sort of workplace
Yeah,
that's a hybrid workplace. I mean, there are companies that say you never
yeah,
have to come back. There are companies that are requiring you have to come back full time. And
that's
then
right.
there are somewhere in between where, okay, you can put in a
Mhm.
couple of days here and there, or you're required to travel, or whatever the scenario is. So how do you see that? How do you see the whole assistant workplace growing or shrinking, or
Yeah.
how do you see it playing out going forward?
Well, I'm admitting I don't have a crystal ball,
None of
but
us do.
but I do
Assuming it
speak
sort of keeps changing and evolving.
I do speak with a lot of recruiters, and I speak with many assistants and many leaders, and the job market is super hot right now for assistants. The leaders of our world are they, like everybody else, are in an unprecedented time where no one taught leaders how to manage a staff that's part hybrid and part in the office. Like, how do you stay connected to
Right,
these fragmented people? What I know is assistants are great at bringing order to chaos. Leaders are great with the big vision, and the assistants are great with the minutia. In general, that's the complementary skill sets that we're talking about.
they can make it happen.
They can, and the key will be that leaders give their assistants the leeway and the runway to speak what they see, to
Right.
say their idea about how to bring order to the chaos. They need a way to communicate what they naturally are great at, which is to bring organization to a fragmented group of people. And
Hmm.
that means, making some decisions about the smartest way to conduct Zoom meetings during the week. Some companies are having no meetings on Fridays, or no meetings after 1 p.m. on Fridays or Wednesdays, or they just decide together what they do.
Right.
And it's assistants who are bringing some of those ideas to the table, because what they're understanding is that people are burning out from this new
And there are
situation
also
we're in.
people, they're good because they know how to reach out, and they know how to sort of pull their audience, and they know who to ask. Like, I
Right.
always said that one of my strongest skills was reading the table, right? So I can walk in, I can be in a meeting, I can
Mhm.
read the table, I can sense what's happening. And it's the same thing if a speaker is up on a stage and they're bombing. It's seconds before I know that they're losing that audience, right?
Mhm.
And it's a gut kind of a thing. I don't know that it's something you teach people, but it's something that's intuitive. You can see, you can feel the energy in the room. You can read what's going on. And even
But
if you're not in the same room, you can read it on Zoom. I mean,
yeah,
to
I
some
think you
extent.
can. Now, you've been doing this a long time,
Yeah,
right? And I suspect you've gotten better at it.
absolutely.
At the beginning, you probably had an innate talent for that, but over the years, you've sharpened it and you can get to it faster. And that's true for assistants as well.
Hmm.
With experience and practice comes excellence. And that's why young assistants might have potentially more energy, but an older assistant, a more experienced assistant, they bring that experience
That
into the
sense of
room
that,
and the ability to size it up fast,
yeah.
where a younger, less experienced assistant won't necessarily have that. So I see a growing job market. I see it shifting and changing and evolving. I absolutely see the profession of assistants growing. Salaries are going up. The assistants who are willing to travel, the assistants who are willing to go into the office 5 days a week plus are the ones making even more money. And the newest skill that's being desired is the ability to have direct reports, is the ability to manage people remotely.
Hmm.
That's a very special skill to be able
Right.
to, have um, to create an environment where you're building a team. Not everybody can do that.
Hmm.
That's also a very special skill.
Well, having that trust in the environment and having someone that or having multiple people that can earn that trust is so critical to that team building and and the ability to communicate with all of the people on that
All of
team.
that
And
is vital.
I mean, also, I mean, look at workplace safety, and all of that is just so huge right now. I mean, we could go on for hours, but that's a huge part of
Yeah.
people, feeling safe in the environments that they're working in, and
Yeah.
knowing that the people care about them, and that they're safe places. Psychological safety is huge.
Yeah, HR has a real big challenge right now. And as the assistants of the world, I support the assistants to offer support to HR. As one HR, I'm writing a new book. My new
Hmm.
book is called Staff Matters. And in the course of doing the research, I've been talking with HR
Uh-huh.
directors. And some of them, one particular one, said to me, Bonnie, when the pandemic hit, the world expected us to be instant infectious disease experts. And then when the shootings happened, instant experts on,
Safety
active shooter
precautions.
plans in
Right, right.
companies. And it's not fair to expect that from HR. So I have great empathy for them. And I know that they are in many HR departments are in chaos right now because the priorities are just coming from all over. Um,
It's a
it's a
lot to
constant
handle, and I
situation.
think,
It's a
you
lot
know,
to handle.
it's a lot to handle for each of us individually, I think, is finding so much in the world difficult to handle. And now you combine it
Mhm.
into, okay, you layer the work on top of it, you layer on, your family on top of it, you layer on all of these world activities that you have no control over on top of all of it. And you're like,
Yeah.
everybody just is almost frozen to a certain extent and just numbed by the environment. And no matter
Yeah.
how resilient you are, and a lot of us have that resiliency and we can bounce back, but at some point it gets harder and harder to bounce back, and it takes longer and longer to bounce back each time. And I
Agreed.
think a lot of people are feeling that right now.
Well, mental health is a big topic that is on a lot of people's minds and companies. And here's the thing, one thing that worries me a great deal, and that is you're right about the paralysis that freezes us when we don't know, like, okay, what's our next move? There's so many screaming priorities. What do you do first? Well, we know that people behave differently when they're under stress. And sometimes what's happening more frequently right now is that some people are acting out their stress, creating toxic work environments.
Mm-hmm.
They're acting their stress out by bullying people and sexually harassing people and creating a hostile work environment, essentially.
And it's their own frustration that's probably driving it.
Yes. Now, even though we can intellectualize it and understand it, when actual human beings are having to
Deal with it.
experience those behaviors, being screamed at,
Mm-hmm.
an assistant said that her executive came up to her in an actual meeting and took her head in his hands and said, "Did you leave your brain at home today?" You know,
How
pencils
do you go
being,
back to that job the next day, right?
how do you do that? And you can't make this stuff up.
Right, right.
And
It's
it's not okay for everybody who's listening. And many people tell me that they know what it feels like to be either bullied or to have watched bullying. And it is a traumatizing set of behaviors which are not okay. And the people of this workplace can be part of the solution. We need to
we
develop
need to really be
cultures.
part of the solution.
Oh
So,
yeah.
Bonnie, one of the things I ask people when I'm starting to wrap it up is if there were one or two things that you wish somebody shared with you when you first resigned and went out on your own that would have made your life easier, or that you would have thought, that had you known it, would have just made that journey just easier and quicker and less
Yeah.
intimidating maybe. What do you wish that you had known and that you would share with somebody else when they're thinking about going out on that journey?
I admit I had a naivete about being a business owner, and I wished I'd done more research about what it takes to run a business. And I did it by the seat of my pants, and I think I made some costly mistakes. Um, and it would have been valuable to have someone I trusted say to me, "Be sure you hire the people you need to do the tasks you're not good at and that you don't like to do." So ultimately that meant an accountant, a bookkeeper,
Right, right.
a lawyer.
I was thinking the same thing.
But I didn't know that at first. And so I tried to do that myself. And I wasted a lot of time like that. And
Hmm.
so the same advice I gave on this call is what I wished I'd gotten myself, which is that you only get 24 hours in a day and you need to sleep sometime and eat
Right.
and maybe hug your family.
So
It's
think
easy
about
to,
what you love. Think about what's your zone of genius. And, it's
great
always
way.
about like, what's your zone of genius versus your zone of excellence? And
Yeah.
it's not a question that we all ask ourselves. And also, it took a really long time to determine, what's the difference? And really, what am I good at, but what do I really love? And where do I really make that impact? And I
Yeah.
think that's the
I mean,
question that you're sort of looking at, right?
I didn't get taught, like, how do I price myself? The whole subject of money is this big secret thing for women, especially, and it can't be. We as women need to collaborate with one another and to be supportive and elevate each other. And that's just not a kumbaya, nice to say sentence.
Right.
It is real. Olympia Dukakis used to say, Bonnie, the only people who benefit from women tearing each other down and fighting each other are men. Men are very busy in general, helping each other get promoted and getting jobs. And we as women need to do exactly that
Right.
for one another, and to lose the judgments and lose the,
It's not competition.
it's
There's
not,
enough for everybody out there. I think,
there really is.
I think it's just realizing that part of this is paying it forward, right? It's like, it's not about money. It's about sharing. It's about, giving people the stories and the experience to know and to think about what do they need to know to go out there and make a difference, you know?
Well, yeah, and that's easier said than done, Caryn. One thing that I've come to know is that women in general have a harder time advocating for themselves than they do for others. And so if we are parents if we have young people in our lives who we care about their futures, you know, you don't have to be a parent to care
Right.
about generations coming up, then let's do it for them. Like, honestly, I think that these changes, like to end workplace bullying and to end sexual harassment, they not only benefit you and me, but they will benefit our
Many
daughters and
generations to come.
granddaughters if we can be successful in creating
Right.
policies that 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 effectively address these issues. Then it's not only about us, is the thing. That let's do it for them, and I think that's a legitimate
And I think,
point.
Bonnie, that is another whole conversation that we need to have. It's really, my hope and my goal is that everyone who's thinking about going out there and trying something and doing it, because they really believe in it and it's their dream and they want to do it, they don't lose anything by trying. And so many women, I think, are afraid to fail, or they're embarrassed by it, or
Oh yeah,
they just don't want to look like they failed, or whatever, or maybe they're afraid of success. You never know what the fear is at the
but
end of the
you're
day
right.
that's
There's a
stopping
lot
it.
of fear out there,
There's
and
a lot of fear, and at the end of the day, I believe that you have to just try it. I mean, we're our own worst enemy so much of the time, and if we can just move beyond and be inspired and have mentors, and trust people. I mean, really, part of it is trusting yourself, and also trusting others, and then doing what you believe, because there's a lot of opinions, as you said early on, right? There's a lot of people who you thought would support you, but
Mhm.
didn't. But at the end of the day, you had to have that inner trust. You had to know that you were
Right.
willing to succeed, or you're willing to fail, and you're willing to try it because it matters to you. And I think that's what taking the leap is about, right? It matters to you, and you've got to be willing to go for it. And
Mhm.
and and if it doesn't work the first time, maybe it works the second or the third, or maybe it doesn't work, but you tried it and you feel really good about trying it. And
Yeah, it's great advice, and it's scary stuff, though, and that's why we need one another to kind of metaphorically hold our hands as we take the leap, because it was terrifying. I mean, I just want to validate anyone listening to this that
it's
there
not
were those
easy.
nights waking up in a cold sweat at 2 in the morning thinking, what am I doing? Just terrified. Those things happen. And that's when we need each other to call upon and, say, Caryn, I need you. I need to talk. I need
Bonnie, I
to,
need your help. Help.
I see that's what we need to do for each other, to have our A team of people because none of us gets there alone.
Right.
No one could name a person out there who got to their level of success alone. Nobody. I
Right.
defy you to name
Right, and
anyone who
then when you
got there.
ask them, "Oh, yeah, well, oh, yeah, this person I met at this time did," I mean, and it's not usually one person. There's
No,
different
right,
stages, and at each different stage, there was somebody who said something
right,
or did something that
mhm,
made you think, or that made you pivot, or that made
right.
you make a decision that you weren't planning to make, or open your eyes to something that's out there that you just didn't see before, right? I mean, we all have our blind spots. We all don't see everything that's right in front of us. So
No,
it's
it
always
doesn't.
great to have someone else who does, right?
It's messy. It's messy to do this, but the good news, women out there, what the great news is about women? Women are good at cleaning up messes. Women are great at tolerating mess and
Mhm.
and to clean it up. I know you know what I'm talking about. We can do this.
100%.
Life is not a rehearsal. This is not. If the pandemic has proven anything, it is that life can change in a
Right.
heartbeat. So if you're listening out there and you're wanting to go for your dream, um, I'd love for you to contact me, and I know Caryn would love you to contact her. We
Well,
want you to
Bonnie,
succeed.
I love this conversation. I love what you're doing. I can't wait. If you want a reader for the next book, I'm raising my hand.
Oh, thank
I'd be
you.
happy to be a reader.
I'm taking no
I'm
prisoners
actually
here.
working on a book as well.
Oh,
Kind little
yay,
bit of a
good.
secret. It's about relationships. It's about how I view building relationships, and how you do that. And
Hey,
so
you
it's
should
49
write the
different
book.
ways to actually create those meaningful business relationships. So, yeah, you know what it's like to do that, and it's not an easy thing to do that, but it's
No.
really important.
But people love to help. So we need to take the leap and just ask.
Yeah.
I've had to, take a deep breath before I hit send sometimes. And then it surprises me when people understand your passion and your goal, they often want to help, and they say yes. So
Well, here's to many more yeses. Here's to hopefully seeing you in person sometime soon and having
yes,
another lunch, but knowing that each other is always there to help no matter what. So thank you, Bonnie. It was amazing. Great
thanks,
seeing you.
Caryn.
Great chatting with you. I love this. For anyone, this will be up on YouTube soon, and I'll be sending the link out for it. Share it with your friends, share it with your colleagues. Bonnie's there to help in so many situations, and you can find her at, tell us where they can find you, at bonnielowkramen.com, right?
BonnieLow-Kramen.com. I'm pretty easy to find. Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm really active on LinkedIn. I do have a YouTube channel, and I hope you'll check out the TEDx talk.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day,
Thanks,
everybody.
Caryn.
Thank you.